Coming up on Network Africa. Human Rights Watch accuses Burkina Faso soldiers of murdering civilians in revenge attack. It's World Malaria Day with the theme accelerating the fight against malaria for a more equitable world. Plus, the UN says it is concerned about conflict in, as well as deterioration of the humanitarian situation in the eastern DRC. In West Africa, but local reports claim that several hostages abducted by suspected jihadists near Bandagara in central Mali have been freed. Local groups and officials in Mali had been calling for the release of more than 110 people kidnapped by suspected jihadists last Tuesday. The RFI news agency reports that several dozens of people were released on Wednesday, mainly villagers whose authorities had signed informal peace agreements with some jihadist groups operating in their zone. The hostages had been traveling in at least 3 buses that were stopped by armed men and driven into a forest between Bandagara and Bankas in the center of the country last week before being intercepted. According to villagers in the communities, the kidnappers are believed to be jihadists from the Al-Qaeda-linked JNIM. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso, hundreds of civilians, including at least 56 children, were reportedly massacred by the military in a single day this year. That's according to rights group, the Human Rights Watch. A group says its investigation found that during the attacks in February, the army killed 179 people in Soro village and 44 others in the nearby Nondin village. HRW terms the mass killings the worst army abuse incidents in the country in nearly a decade. However, the Burkina Faso authorities are yet to comment on the report. Staying with the theme security, the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has established a mobile operating base in Chi, which is southeast of Jugu, to address the crisis in the country. Peacekeepers continue to conduct patrols in the area to prevent further attacks and protect civilians. At the UN Security Council meeting recently, UN officials called for concrete and urgent steps to be taken in the Great Lakes region. Speaking at the Council, Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator Joyce Msuya says the humanitarian operation is dangerously overstretched and the people in the DRC and the Great Lakes region deserve the opportunity to live in peace.
Urgent steps must be taken to resolve the conflict and avoid further deterioration of the situation in DRC and across the region. After so many years, people in DRC and in the Great Lakes region deserve the opportunity to live in peace and to build the safe, secure, and prosperous lives that the richly abundant region promises.
The fact that the genocidal FDLR and its splinter groups is embedded with DRC Army, the FARDC, which arms and provides them with military, logistical, financial, and political support, is of serious concern to Rwanda. This is because FDLR causes a direct and existential threat to Rwanda's security and territorial integrity.
It's World Malaria Day today, and in commemoration here in Nigeria, the African Youth Growth Foundation is urging both state and federal governments to prioritize investments in malaria control programs, including ensuring the availability of mosquito-treated nets for vulnerable populations. Additionally, the foundation is urging the government to expedite discussions regarding the availability of the newly approved malaria vaccine. Malaria remains a significant cause of mortality in Africa, resulting in over 100,000 deaths annually in Nigeria alone.
April the 25th of every year is set aside by the World Health Organization, WHO, to mark World Malaria Day. And this news conference in Abuja is just to highlight key demands on the Nigerian government as it prepares to mark the 2024 edition.
You stated quite a number of
According to the WHO, 249 million cases of malaria were reported in 2022, and 76% of these cases were children under 5 years. The disease has accounted for an estimated 608,000 deaths in Africa alone. In Nigeria, 68 million cases and 194,000 fatalities were recorded in 2021, making it one of the deadliest diseases in the country.
Estimated 4 out of 5 malaria-related deaths in the African.
At this pre-World Malaria Day news conference, participants are asking the government to urgently scale up malaria interventions.
We are calling on the government to prioritize investment in malaria programming and implementation in the country. We are appealing to Nigerians to adopt best practices in preventing malaria within their neighborhood.
Over the years, the Nigerian government has rolled out strategic plans to eliminate malaria. Some of these interventions include the inauguration of End Malaria Council in 2022, Rollback Malaria Program, the National Malaria Elimination Program, and several other strategic plans. Aside from these interventions, the federal government also, in August 2023, gave approval for the use of the R21 malaria vaccine.
The R21 malaria vaccine dossier complied substantially with best international standards. It was also adjudged that the vaccine's known potential benefits outweigh the risks. The Joint Review Committee recognized the importance of an effective malaria vaccine that has 75% protection as an additional interventional tool as a critical need in Nigeria that has the highest malaria burden.
However, almost 1 year after the approval was given, the vaccines are nowhere to be found, and malaria continues to kill Nigerians in their numbers.
Staying with malaria, Kenya seems to be making some progress with local manufacturing of crucial medication. The Kenya-based Universal Corporation Limited last year received the World Health Organization's approval to produce a crucial anti-malarial drug known as sulfadoxine pyrimethamine plus amodiaquine or SPARC. This was an important step in Africa's capacity to make life-saving medications a new focus for governments and public health officials after vulnerabilities were exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Causing new concerns is the World Health Organization World Malaria Report of 2023, which includes a chapter on the link between malaria and climate change for the first time. A small number of locally transmitted cases in the United States last year was a reminder of that climate change is a significant malaria risk multiplier. Let's understand this issue better now. I'm being joined by Dr. Shalom Oni. He's a public health physician in Ota, Ogun State. Dr. Oni, thank you for joining us on the program. We see that you are in transit, so great to see you. How do you understand, how was WHO's approval for the manufacture of sulfadoxine pyrimethamine and amodiaquine affected? How has it affected the picture of malaria in Kenya?
Well, clinically, the approval of sulfadoxine pyrimethamine production by WHO has increased hospital admission-related malaria cases. However, the 3 A's, which are barriers to reduction of malaria mortality, still persist. Talking about acceptability, affordability, and ability. As far as acceptability is concerned, we still have certain distrust going on there, even in Kenya, in terms of how malaria should be treated among some population. In terms of affordability, at least there are about 4 districts in Kenya whereby we have low socioeconomic power So making it difficult, for the citizens there to be able to afford the anti-malaria. Then we're talking about accessibility. Currently, there's human resource a shortage, in Kenya right now. The staff shifting, and even the hospitals are not opening at the right time. So for citizens to access healthcare and to access malaria treatment is difficult. But by and large, the production of malaria in Kenya, is really a positive step, in the war against malaria. And clinical itself, the drug itself is effective. It can cure malaria itself, but we still have those three barriers which are still drawing us back as far as the war against malaria is concerned. Not only in Kenya, but in sub-Saharan Africa.
And even made worse now by the strike by the doctors. Would you say the residents need to pay more attention to other traditional methods of prevention, like insecticide treatment, nets, and indoor spraying, in addition to the introduction of these drugs?
Yes, the provision of pesticide-treated nets, other adjunct measures, in mitigating malaria endemicity, also needs to come on board. They have also helped. We have enough statistics to show, that is treated nets, environmental sanitation, drainages, avoiding stagnant water, and other adjunct measures have really helped, in mitigating malaria endemicity, in line with the provision of drugs, production of drugs, and also ability of the vaccine.
How available, Doctor, is the RTSS vaccine since the pilot phase came to an end?
Yeah, the RTSS vaccine, it's a new vaccine that has been approved, by WHO, one of the vaccines approved, malaria vaccine. It's effective. At least we've had percent reduction in malaria-related admission, across board, even in Kenya and even in sub-Saharan Africa. So it has really helped us a lot, in reducing admission cases. Not only that, over a 24-month period, for ages 5 months to 17 months, it has been proven that there is about 75% effectiveness, of this malaria vaccine. So for us, it's a step in that direction. We hope that newer versions will come on board, and the vaccine can be worked upon and become more effective.
I'm sure you're familiar, Doctor, with some of the superstitions regarding malaria infections. Some of them exist in Kenya. I heard from my producer that many in Kenya believe that malaria is probably caused by witchcraft. I know here in Nigeria, people say it's caused by excessive oil in foods. So how should the government address this?
Well, this is where orientation comes in, massive awareness, through the mass media. This is where the government needs to come into play, to see how they can debunk all these rumors and orientate the citizens. The government needs to come on ground to use all, stakeholder engagement meetings from the grassroots to warded committees, to community development committees, to local government chairman, to district chairman, even to the state governors. This is where the massive advocacy stakeholder meeting needs to come on board, to debunk these theories, these myths, these false beliefs, and cultural beliefs that is affecting our war against malaria.
I know you have to go, Dr. Oni, but I need to ask this last question, and that's the relationship between malaria and climate change. Now, in some countries, such as the US, they've discovered a small population have been infected by malaria, and they're attributing this to climate change. Can we say the same for here in Africa, and could it get worse?
Yes, it could get worse because right now you can see that the environment, the room temperature has actually increased, in Nigeria and in tropical areas also. So climate change is taking its impact, it's taking its toll, not only in Africa, on Africa, but also, in Europe and in US. So this is where the government needs to come on board. They can do to mitigate the effect of climate change. Here in Lagos, you see the state governor have signed a memorandum of understanding, in the fight against, to combat the challenges, the factors, that are brought about by climate change in our environment. So we want all the political will needs to come on board, to ensure that all eyes are on deck to fight against the effect of climate change. But it's likely going to get worse. The heats are increasing, not only in Africa, in Europe and US also. And this is what the malaria belts, the malaria actually needs, to thrive.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shalom Oni, for breaking it down for us, and we wish you a safe trip in your travels. Welcome back to Network Africa. Over 282 million people in 59 countries and territories suffered acute food insecurity in 2023. That's according to the 2024 Global Report on Food Crisis. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says these numbers represent a 24 million increase in comparison to the previous year. The report reveals that conflict, extreme weather events, and economic shocks are the main drivers behind acute hunger worldwide. The report is authored by the Global Network Against Food Crisis, an alliance of humanitarian and development actors launched by the FAO with other partners back in 2016.
The single most significant driver of acute food insecurity is conflict and violence. This was the primary driver in 20 of the 59 countries and represented in absolute terms the key driver for the largest number of people in acute food insecurity. The second driver then relates to extreme weather events. We've had the hottest year on record. The El Nino phenomenon, just to name one of the factors, has been a key driver behind it. So climatic events was the second most significant driver, and economic shocks was the third most important driver. And again, here I think it's important not to view these three drivers in isolation. What we see is that often, typically, these three have been mutually reinforcing and together exacerbated the acute food insecurity situation. We've seen a significant deterioration in the last 12 months. And it's in the last 12 months because it's 12 months ago this month that fighting started in the country, again showing this direct relationship between conflict and acute food insecurity. But the other thing that we've seen in Sudan is the impact of the climate crisis and the climate change. Some of the communities I visited in Red Sea State, for example, showed me basic agricultural infrastructure that had been washed away the last time there were significant rains. Earth dams that were required to keep water in place to allow for hand irrigation of fields, for example, had been broken through because the rains came much more quickly and with larger amounts than they were anticipating. And so again, we see this overlap geographically between conflict, between climate crisis, and indeed economic shocks as well.
Nigeria's permanent representative to the ECOWAS, Ambassador Musa Nuhu, says the African security landscape is continuously changing due to new intricate threats. The challenges necessitate a united response that transcends national borders. Ambassador Nuhu made the remarks during the inaugural joint meeting of the African Union Peace and Security Council with the ECOWAS in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital. He emphasized that this joint meeting marks a pivotal moment in the collective endeavor to achieve stability in the region since the Peace and Security Council's establishment. Mr. Nuhu urged council members to explore avenues of cooperation, including concerted efforts to maintain zero-tolerance stance against unconstitutional changes of government and implement effective counterterrorism measures.
In the course of our joint consultation, we are expected to explore areas of cooperation, including making concerted effort on developing strategies to sustain zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes of government, and also come up with recommendations on effective counter-terrorism measures. We will also discuss mobilizing resources for regional and continental peace initiatives, as well as building synergies, coordination, and complementarity in our endeavors. Therefore, I want to seize this opportunity to urge all of us to engage in an in-depth discussion that will allow us to identify areas of potential synergies and foster coherent response to achieve this political stability that we have been yearning for in our continent. The African Union engagement with regional economic communities should involve discussions on economic development, humanitarian intervention, social cohesion, infrastructural development, which are building blocks for good governance that will guarantee peaceful and stable Africa.
Africa's growth is below the pre-COVID-19 pandemic rate, but remains the second highest globally, according to a new report on Africa by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Our correspondent, Ayola Kasim, has been in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, where this report was released.
In Africa, poverty, inequality, food insecurity, and unemployment continue to be aggravated, with 476 million people, or about one-third of the continent's population, is estimated to be in poverty in 2024. That is 50 million more than the number recorded in 2019. And with an average real GDP growth below the continent's potentials in recent years, financing development by countries in the region is an ongoing challenge. And when this is mixed with the issues of climate change, even those in the know still have questions about how Africa can achieve its green mandate.
And now the cost is almost close to 5% of GDP for almost most of the African countries. And the question is, how do we deal with this kind of situation? Most of the resources, which are environmental resources, are not coming as fast as people need, while they are still addressing the other issues. And meaning that there is a high cost for not having the investment grade, meaning you cannot raise money cheaply. So how do you finance development at the same time raise money to finance climate? And that's where you find the intersection of what this one means.
The experts tell us the resources to achieving a just transition is possible because Africa has the potential to leapfrog. But to be able to take that big jump, countries need to promote low-carbon development pathways with gradual transition away from their fossil needs, leverage critical minerals, shift to collaborative governance, and harness frontier technologies.
We just also highlight in the report, this cannot be done as business as usual. So while we combine different elements, and perhaps none of the elements alone is new, together it's a new approach, and it will require a major transformation, transformational leadership, and also systemic changes in areas of economic governance. It will have to, learn from the past experience how to effectively deploy and utilize natural resources. And human endowments and human capital will need to be developed also. And of course, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement can play a major role in this transition.
Like in any transition, there will be winners and losers. And we need to make sure that we are taking sufficient measures to take into account the impact of different parts of the population and what does it mean, and the incentives to actually, accelerate the type of private sector and industries and innovations that can capitalize on our unique resources for green transition and at the same time enable this transition to be smooth for the sectors that need to adapt.
Of course, many here know that the journey towards a just transition is not easy, but acknowledge it is a necessary one. The journey that Africa must take to ensure its citizens are not left behind. From the UNECA headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Let's segue into Tanzania now, where, believe it or not, authorities have had to shut down 5 hydroelectric stations in a bid to reduce excess electricity in the national grid. Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa says the main plant, Mwalimu Nyerere Hydroelectric Station, is generating enough electricity to power major cities, including the capital, the commercial hub, Dar es Salaam. The state-run power company, TANESCO, says all stations have been turned off because the demand is low, the electricity production is too much, and there is no allocation for now. And as we end the program today, pushing the limits, of British Army's most senior soldier underwent heat acclimation training at the university to prepare for an ultra marathon across the Sahara Desert. Sergeant Major Paul Carney completed a marathon descent, a 6-day 155.3-mile race in Morocco on Monday. He exercised in a heat chamber at the University of Chichester in preparation for the grueling event. The 44-year-old said the facilities helped ensure his body could cope under the tough conditions. That's Network Africa today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi.